Nearly 200 educators, administrators, and students across New York State attended. There, they broke out into classrooms and discussed how to strategically incorporate gender-based ideology into lesson planning. Here's special education teacher Cynthia Clough from the Albany School District.
You can just be, I don't want to use the word insidious. The word I want to use is just quietly disruptive. You know, as a classroom teacher in your buildings, you put your little rainbow sticker up. I'm not saying everybody come out and be like, ooh, guess what? You don't have to do all that. You can just do it on a quiet a book you read, the language you use in your classroom, the opening of your kids' minds to other opportunities, to other pathways, to just letting your kids know that your classroom is a safe space. Even those things, I mean, you could read, Johnny Has Two Mommies if you want to. You could read on the book reading day, it's like February 2nd, you could read the jazz story. Or have, your drag queens come in and read the jazz story if you want to. Or you could just quietly read books. Don't even bring attention to them. If you're writing a math sheet, write a math sheet and put a picture of someone on there who's like, a non-binary, maybe looking kind of person.
That's Michael Smith, a world languages teacher of Long Island, one of Assistant Superintendent David Casamento's teachers who works in the East Meadow School District.
If I decide to come in with makeup and bigger shoulder pads, am I really doing drag? Am I just being me? Where does the line fall? So I think that introduction of it really can be as simple as saying, hey, we're going to read a book from Dr. Seuss, and here's a quote from Martin Luther King, and here's a quote from RuPaul, and just having like little kind of drops of exposure to somebody's upbringing. I mean, that's what settles into our psyche as what normalcy is, right? More exposure. And people that have extreme culture shock are people that are isolated and aren't exposed to somebody who's different. You grow up in New York and you see, you walk down the street, you see 74 different kinds of people all the time.
I remember the first time I went swimming after my top surgery. It was awesome. And I never swam before that. I never went to the beach. So there's things I would choose to not do in navigating my situation so that it felt most comfortable to me. And I was working very physical jobs at that time. I spent about 6 years saving up for my top surgery because it wasn't covered by health insurance back then, and binding and working physical jobs, saving money, traveling for surgery. I traveled to San Francisco, and there were a lot of barriers at the time, which is why I'm so grateful with Northwell Health and the development of health systems on Long Island. It's so encouraging to see the change that we're kind of in the middle of that change. We're in that period of history where things are progressing.
And so one of the courses that I was teaching was reaching out to our gay and transgender students. And these kids just coming up to me, like, I just want to share with you that I identify as trans, and I really prefer this, but please don't tell home. And they're like, I didn't realize how many kids were like this. So those are the subtle things that I think make the ripples that make waves. That class, because that was the class that I was like, let's watch some drag, let's talk about it, let's have fun. But the people that do teach, it's great. It's Teacher Education Institute, and they have reaching out to our gay and transgender students. It's affordable. We're doing hormone blockers as well. So if somebody's really ambivalent about their identity and where they are and kind of growing up, there's a lot of opportunity for kids that have to go on hormone blockers, which would sort of pauses their development so that they have time for them to maybe have a few extra years to kind of think about where they want to go. Because the longer that you go through adolescence and puberty, the less you can do if that child really does identify as transgender and wants to be able to go a different avenue. Being able to do that's a great conversation. If that student develops some autonomy and wants to be able to make a big decision about whether it's surgery or going on hormones or whatnot, that transition is going to be a little bit more challenging than if they were able to have that validation earlier on in their life. The roster always says their birth names, so when I call that student by their first name, it's the name that they want. But if I have to call home, I have to use she, her pronouns and use that student's assigned name.
So, and did this student bring up blockers to you?
Oh yeah.